It's day 17 of the hush money trial, and once again the star witness will testify. Here's Trump arriving at court.
Mr. Trump, are you directing surrogates to speak on your behalf?
Mr. Trump, will you testify?
I do have a lot of surrogates, and they are speaking very beautifully, and they come all from all over Washington, and they're highly respected, and they think this is the greatest scam they've ever seen. And some are Democrats. They're very embarrassed by what's going on. I just want to start by saying that on the electric vehicles that Biden is pushing down everybody's throat, even though people don't want them, he wants to put a big tariff on China, which is a suggestion that I said, where have you been for 3.5 years? They should have done it a long time ago. But they've also got to do it on other vehicles, and they have to do it on a lot of other products, because China's eating our lunch right now. And they went away from what I was doing. They're eating our lunch, so they have to do it on much more than electric vehicles, and they have to get going fast, but it should have been done 3.5 years ago. I did it, I started. And then they started playing games, and it was very bad for the auto industry. In Michigan, the auto industry is doing very poorly because jobs are starting to leave. We're losing. You know, with the electric vehicle mandate, they're going to be made in China. They're all going to be made in China and also in Mexico, owned by China. Poll just came out, the very respected Redfield Wilton, and it has us up 6 in Michigan, 7 in North Carolina, Pennsylvania +2, Georgia +5, Florida +9, Arizona +2, and up in every other place 2. So that just came out. That's on top of yesterday's New York Times. Well, I think today I might just quote somebody that frankly has been extremely respectful to me over the last period of a few months. He's watching this scam taking place. Michael Avenatti. Have you heard the name? He said, the next time you're accused of something by someone, a coworker, neighbor, friend, significant other, stranger, ask yourself if it would be okay if only they were allowed to speak, accuse, antagonize, while you were not allowed to respond. He's talking about the gag order. Or defend yourself in any way. If your answer is no, then you too should be angered by Trump not being allowed to respond to the various people that are making comments. Now think of it. You ask me questions, I'm not allowed to respond. They're the easiest questions that could possibly be asked. Only a guy like Biden couldn't answer those questions because he's not there. You ready? So here's a couple of quotes. Mark Levin, great man, great legal talent. This is not a trial of Donald Trump. It's a case of the Democrat Party versus America. It also represents the greatest effort to interfere with and steal a federal election in American political history. Biden is seeking to clear the field. He wants to clear the field because he can't do it himself, so he's weaponized the Department of Justice. And as you know, they have their people in that room. The DOJ is in that room because they want to try and hurt me. Now, the good news is my poll numbers have gone up significantly. This is not what they had in mind. Newt Gingrich, this is without precedent in American history. It has never occurred to President John Adams or anybody else that you could jail your primary competitor, your primary opponent. In his case, Vice President Thomas Jefferson. This goes back a long way. This has never happened in our country before. There's never been anything like this. Andy McCarthy just came out. New Yorkers should be outraged at the mockery Bragg is making of the state's legal system as the entire country looks on. The entire world is looking on. There's a very bad thing that's happening in New York. Businesses are leaving New York because of what happened here and what happened with another crooked judge, Engoron. Totally crooked. And he's under investigation right now, as he should be. He's under big investigation, I hear, right now. Jonathan Turley. Experts are shrugging. Not sure what the crime is being alleged. Prosecutors have not explained why denoting this as a legal expense was wrong. So they say at the bookkeeping era. I paid a lawyer a certain amount of money. We marked it down as legal expense. So I had a legal expense, and I marked it down as a legal expense. I didn't mark it down as construction of a wall, construction of a building. I didn't mark it down as electricity cost. I took a legal expense, and they called it, I didn't do it, a bookkeeper did it. She did it exactly right. Took a legal expense and called it a legal expense. This is their whole case. Are you allowed to call a legal expense a legal expense? I don't know what else you call it, actually. But he brings it up here, the legal expense. It was, what's the problem? I never thought that as an attorney I could see a system like New York's, one of the most sophisticated legal bars in the world, really debase itself so badly. This judge should not be allowed in the case, and he should not allow this case to go forward. Mershon should rule in favor of a directed verdict immediately. There is an insufficient amount of evidence. No crime has been shown. No crime's been committed. There's been no crime. Judge Janine Bureau, she talks here. She's very excited here. He's a fool. He's not an experienced judge. So I'll make that one a little short. I don't want to insult anybody. Greg Jarrett, brilliant guy. Bragg's argument is legally flawed. The Federal Election Commission, FEC, determined there was no campaign finance violation. The Department of Justice agreed. No civil fine was levied or criminal charge rendered. Those two entities have exclusive authority over federal elections. The state has absolutely no authority, and the city, Bragg, has no authority. And Bragg never wanted to bring this case, in all fairness to him. He never wanted to bring this case. Not a local prosecutor such as Alvin Bragg should be involved in this case. And by the way, the judge, as you know, is totally conflicted, and everybody's talking about it. It's an embarrassment to New York. Legal analyst Michael Moore of CNN doesn't think the prosecution has proven its case. Senator John Kennedy, respected gentleman, I will tell you that trial says more about politics than it does about an alleged crime. If you want to hide something from Bragg, you put it in the law book. Bringing in a fellow criminal trial, it hasn't proved to be a felony. There was no crime. Everybody is saying there's no crime. There is but I've been here for almost 4 weeks in an icebox. I call it the icebox, listening to a judge who's totally corrupt and conflicted. Will Scharf, highly respected lawyer. Hush money, it's not a crime. Signing an NDA is not a crime. By the way, Congress, everybody in Congress have NDAs. NDAs are very common. Non-disclosure agreements. They're not a crime. Clayman, CBS Morning News, there's no evidence that this case is about campaign election violations. There's no evidence. But again, we go back to the federal law. The FEC, Federal Election Commission, said there's not a problem, there's no case. And Vivek, who's here right now, so he can speak for himself, he said this is a sham trial. It's politically motivated. It's an assault on the leading candidate for U.S. president. I would expect he would say something good, actually, so I won't go through the rest, but he's here. He's going to talk to you. The Speaker of the House is here. We have Byron Donalds. Corey is here. We have a lot of great people here to talk to you. And they won't let them speak here. I guess they want to make it difficult for them to speak. So for some reason, I can speak here, but I'm the only one that's allowed. The gag order has to come off. So when you ask me a question about the people that we're talking about, I'm not allowed to answer. There's never been anything like this in the history of our country. It's a scam. It's election interference at a level that's never taken place before. And now, if you don't mind, I'm going to go into the icebox and sit for a long time. Thank you very much.
Mr. Trump, will you testify?
Mr. Trump, what can we expect from Cross?
Mr. Trump, how is the judge making money off this case?
Michael Cohen began today's testimony by saying he met privately with then-President Donald Trump in the Oval Office in February 2017. Cohen testified that the two talked about the reimbursements for the hush money. Trump asked him if he was okay. He then elaborated, in response to the prosecution's question, that Trump said a reimbursement check for January and February of that year would be forthcoming. After Trump and Cohen met, Cohen took a photo in the White House briefing room. A grinning Cohen at the famous lectern popped up on the evidence screens in court. The prosecution showed emails from Jeff McConney asking Michael Cohen to send invoices for his repayments so that the company could reimburse him. The invoices said they are for services rendered. Was that true? Prosecutor Susan Hoffinger asked. No, ma'am, he replied. Was this invoice a false record? She asked. Yes, ma'am, he replied. This is part of the paper trail for Cohen's reimbursements that are at the heart of the case. Cohen said he did not do much legal work for Donald Trump in 2017 after his boss had entered the White House. But Cohen testified that Trump enlisted him for help in 2018 to open a case against Stormy Daniels, who had broken her settlement agreement by sharing her story publicly. Cohen never billed Trump and was not paid for legal services in 2018, he says. Cohen testified that he hoped his title as personal counsel to Trump would help him win other clients, and he did consulting and advisory work on the side. The prosecutor asked Michael Cohen whether he ever lied for Donald Trump as his personal counsel. Cohen said he did. When asked why, he said, out of loyalty and in order to protect him, referring to lying to the Wall Street Journal and later lying in front of Congress. Michael Cohen talked about the April 2018 raid on his apartment by the FBI, which was the start of his legal issues. How to describe your life being turned upside down? Cohen said of the FBI raid. Despondent, angry. Initially, Cohen said he felt protected by Trump when the FBI raided his home, because he was the president. Shortly after, Trump would cease all contact and Cohen described in details how the life he knew fell apart. This moment later sparked him breaking away from Trump's circle and led to a guilty plea and a prison sentence for Cohen. Cohen's wife, daughter, and son asked him why he continued to remain loyal to Donald Trump. Cohen testified. Ultimately, he decided he would not lie for Trump any longer. The prosecution's last question for Michael Cohen was to ask him if he had any regrets about working for Trump. Cohen says he does. I regret doing things I should not have. Lying and bullying people. I don't regret working for the Trump Organization. As I expressed before, some very interesting and great times. But he adds that to maintain loyalty and to do the things he asked me to do, I violated my moral compass. I suffered, and my family suffered. And that was the end of the prosecution's questions for Michael Cohen. It was time for Trump's lawyers to try to poke holes in his story and to attack his credibility. Todd Blanche wasted no time and got straight to the questions. Blanche asked Cohen if, in late April, he went on social media and called Trump a crying little shit. Cohen quipped back, sounds like something I would say. Under cross-examination, the defense immediately attacked Cohen's credibility as a witness and brought up his many social media comments bashing Trump. Todd Blanche then took another swing at undermining Michael Cohen's character, a theme of the cross-examination. Is it fair to say you are motivated by fame? He asked Cohen. Cohen responded that he doesn't think that's fair. Is it fair that you're motivated by publicity? Blanche then asked. I don't think that's fair to say. I'm motivated by many things, Cohen said. Michael Cohen told the court he made a total of about $3.4 million from the publication of his two books, Disloyal and Revenge. In the first 2 months or so of sales, his first book, Disloyal, made about $2 million, Cohen said. It made another $1 million after the release of his second book. Trump's lawyer Todd Blanche asked him to confirm how much he made from Revenge. Cohen estimated about $400,000. Judge Merchan decided that this was a good stopping point for today. Michael Cohen will be back on the stand on Thursday. Here's Trump leaving court.
Testify, Mr. Trump?
Well, thank you very much. As you know, I'm under a gag order, so I can't really answer those very simple questions that you're asking. I'm under a gag order. Nobody's actually seen anything like it. But we talk about subjects we're allowed to talk about. Would love to not be in the gag order. I'm the Republican nominee for president. I'm leading in every poll, and I have a gag order. So I think it's totally unconstitutional, and we'll test that. This will be tested, because this should never happen to another candidate or another person, what's happening here. And today we had a very good day in court. You see what's happening. And you'll have to report it because I can't talk about it too much. but I think it was a very, very good day. The voters are getting a John McLaughlin, probably #1 poll number with Fabrizio. John McLaughlin is probably the #1 pollster. And voters are getting it. They don't like the idea that the courts are deciding the presidential election. Well, so far my numbers were leading by a lot, as you know, against crooked Joe Biden. Charlie Hurt, a great person, great reporter. The problem for Democrats is that the extensive polling now shows that the voters see through their scam and don't like what's going on. Watching 100,000 enthusiastic people gather along the boardwalk in New Jersey Beach this Saturday, as you probably saw, to support former President Trump on Saturday evening gives you some idea how terrified Democrats are of Trump. Well, I'm not saying it, that he's saying it. I don't think they're terrified of anything. They're fascists. Whatever happens, they cannot face him in the fair and honest election. There's no way anybody else is going to beat Trump. And they're using election interference to try and do it. And he then goes, because they lose and they know it. If it's a fair election, basically he's saying they lose and they know it. Jeff Zeleny of CNN, CNN. As I talk to the voters across the country in these battleground states, many of them aren't paying attention. The reason the president is having trouble, President Biden is having problems, is because young voters, voters of color, and inflation. Young voters, voters of color, and inflation. That is a problem for Biden. Byron York, great person, great reporter, journalist. For months, Democrats had hoped that the specter of Trump on trial would cut into the former president's support. Now we're in the 5th week. Can you believe I've been in here for 5 weeks instead of campaigning? It's a shame, which of course is their dream. It might not be working out the way they anticipated, but that's what they wanted to do, keep me in here as long as possible. Long as possible. Now we're in the 5th week of the trial with wall-to-wall media coverage, and it appears to have not affected Trump's support at all. The Real Clear Politics analyst, Sean Trende, wrote recently, the political science literature is pretty consistent that this is the time when the electorate's views are about the election and it starts to harden, and basically they're saying we're doing really well. You're seeing all the polls. Alan Dershowitz, a great gentleman. This is election interference at the most obvious, and every American, no matter whether you're on the Trump team or against him, whatever political affiliation it is, and he goes on to say he's a Democrat. He can't be right about everything because he's making a big mistake. If you're Jewish and you're a Democrat, and that includes Alan Dershowitz, you ought to have your head examined. You see what's going on with Israel. But he goes, I'm a Democrat. You should be equally concerned about how the legal system is being weaponized and abused for partisan purposes. Remember this, all over the world they're watching this trial and they're seeing what a disgrace this is, and a big disgrace to New York. You know, I love this state, I love this city, and they've got to get it back. They've got to get the legal system back, because businesses are leaving, people are fleeing, but businesses are leaving because they can't go through what I'm going through. Speaker Mike Johnson was here a little while ago. He says, just apply common sense. Take a look at what's happening. Just apply common sense. A great gentleman, Victor Davis Hanson, none of the 5 civil or criminal cases currently lodged against former President Donald Trump, by the way, all going through Washington. This is all election interference by Biden. Have ever had merit. None of them have had merit. These criminal and civil trials are merely the continuation of extra legal efforts of the last 8 years to destroy a presidential candidate in lieu of opposing him in a transparent election. Enemies like China and Russia now boast that America's new political prosecutions are similar to those of their own system, and even more so. That's Victor Davis Hanson, and he goes on with a beautiful statement, and I won't bore you, but the public isn't bored by him at all, and they agree with him 100%. Let's see, any president who would go through the justice system, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, it's a disgrace what's happening. This is something that shouldn't be happening. Tom Fitton, I've carefully tracked the at-real Donald Trump trial up in New York. The prosecution, in quotes, prosecution meaning persecution, hasn't presented any evidence of a crime by Trump whatsoever. Judge Merchan is, well, he says very negative things about him. I don't want to say that about the judge. I'm not going to say that today about the judge. Matt Whitaker, former acting attorney general, I'm deeply concerned about the trial in New York targeting President Trump. It's very unfair, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Brett Tolman, gag order is a tool utilized to protect defendants, rarely if ever applied to one side. They've never seen anything like this gag order. You haven't either, and hopefully you will never again. It's never seen before. It applied to only defendants. You have a constitutional problem without ability to say anything about your own case. I am not allowed to talk about big portions of my case, and nothing like that's ever happened. They're allowed to talk, the other side, but I'm not. Governor Doug Burgum, who was here also. Many politicians were here today, many congressmen and senators, etc. You met some of them. We know from the polls that President Trump is leading all over the country, and the conclusion is that the American people have already acquitted President Trump. I believe that's true, and I believe that a large portion, 80-some-odd%, say this trial is a disgrace. And so are the others, by the way, if you look at the way they're going. Take a look at what's going on in Florida with deranged Jack Smith. He got caught with his hand in the cookie jar. He got caught doing things that you're not supposed to. That's why we call him deranged Jack Smith. He's a deranged person. Representative Byron Donalds, terrific young congressman. This is a travesty of justice. Look around New York. New York's got a lot of issues, and he talks about the issues. We have people being killed right outside, and yet we have 20 prosecutors sitting over there for what most people, almost every single legal analyst says, no crime. There's no crime. But we've got all the DAs in there, and they say it's no crime. Corey Mills, this is nothing more than election interference at its finest. The American people see the sham indictment for what it is. So that's it. Look, the trial is going very well. It's the 4th week. I've been stuck in here for 4 weeks. I call it the icebox. We call it the icebox. Now, today, this is what they should be looking at right here. That's what they should. This is called our new wave of crime, migrant crime. I call it Biden migrant crime, because he's allowed probably 15, 16 million people into our country, having no idea who they are. Many are from prisons and jails. Many are from mental institutions and even insane asylums. They're emptying out all over the world. They're coming into our beautiful USA. And this is a man just charged with the death of a 3-month-old baby. This right here. This is what we're allowing into our country. No checks, no nothing. And then on the economy, interest rates are rising at a rapid rate. And inflation is going up very, very powerfully. And if you know what inflation really is, it's a country buster. Inflation over the last, if you look over 500 years, you look at countries with inflation, they're busted. They bust up countries. And that's what we have. We have record inflation, and it's back. And people are dying because of it. You would have had no inflation with me. We were down to practically nothing. You have record inflation, and it's back, and you have very high interest rates. People can't buy homes. They can't buy anything. They go for food, and it's 40, 50, 60, 70, 80% more than it was just a couple of years ago. So that's a shame. We'll be back tomorrow. Again, we had a very good day. I think we're exposing this scam for what it is. Thank you very much.
Do you have faith in your legal team? Would a new Trump DOJ enforce the Comstock Act? When do you think this will conclude?
Are you afraid of being convicted?
That's it for day 17. See you next time.